Kino pavasaris. Kovo 18, balandžio 5 dienomis visoje Lietuvoje. Didysis partneris Ergo draudimo grupė. Informaciniai partneriai TV3, 15 min žmonės.
Mūsų karta pirmoji supratusi, kaip iš lėto kenkiame gamtai. Ir vienintelė, žinanti, kad dar yra laiko ją išsaugoti. Apsaugokime mūsų visų ateitį. Ergo.
Geriausius kino pavasario filmus parodys žiūrimiausia televizija TV3. Šeštadieniais 22:40.
Festivalis Kino pavasaris jūsų namuose. Visus filmus žiūrėkite Telia televizijoje jums patogiu metu. Telia. Įdomiau tik gyvenimas.
Įtraukia nuo pat pirmųjų sekundžių. Vienu prisėdimu abi serijos susivalgė. Kaip lietuviškas tikrai neblogas.
Sveiki, Kino pavasario ir 15 min žiūrovai. Tęsime pažintį su Europos debiutų konkurso režisieriais ir norėčiau priminti, kad kviečiu tiesiog prisijungti prie mūsų pokalbio ir 15 min Facebook paskyroje užduoti režisieriui klausimus. Na, o aš nieko negaiždama sveikinuosi su Natūrali šviesa režisieriumi Dénesu Nagy iš Vengrijos. Hi, Dénesu.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us. And first of all, actually, congratulations with the Silver Beer in Berlyno for Best Directing. It's really, really nice and big prize, so congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that the film is in Vilnius also.
Yeah, and it's actually first public screenings, even though it's a virtual screenings, but we are really proud to be the first festival to present your film, and I wouldn't lie saying that all of the programmers team really fell for your film, and we really appreciated it and really wanted to share, so we are really happy to screen it. I hope the audience is gonna watch it as well, and I just introduced first you and said that the audience can ask the questions. So sorry if I'm gonna check my phone sometimes, but
no, it's all right.
Just to start the conversation, I thought that you chose a really difficult topic for your debut fiction film, rethinking your country's past in Second World War. And maybe you could tell us why it was important for you to rethink this moment in your country's history.
I have to say that for me, history is only one part of this film. It's for me, it's very important that all these films I do have something to say about contemporary, my world, which I feel around. But of course, history has an effect on me, how I feel today in Hungary. I mean, this is connected for. I mean, to talk about the historical part, it is important to tell that Hungary took part in the Second World War on the side of the German army, the Nazi regime. And basically, Hungary joined this ally because several reasons, but the most important reason is that Hungary wanted to get back some areas of its country which was taken away at the peace treaty after the First World War. It's a bit complicated, but big parts of Hungary was much bigger before, and these territories were taken away. And Hungarian politics, number one aim was to get back these territories, and Nazi regime helped to get back these territories from Slovakia and from Romania. So this was the kind of the situation where Hungary joined this war and sent soldiers to fight against the Soviet Union. many thousands of kilometers away from. It was nothing to protect Hungary. It was basically a kind of agreement, political agreement, and somehow Hungary tends to think about its past, that we were kind of forced into this war, and not to talk about those atrocities that the Hungarian army committed in the Soviet Union against civilians, and also, mostly against civilians, Russian civilians and Ukrainian civilians. And this is something which is still not really talked about even today. It is basically recently, by historians, recently touched on in the past 10 years. In the communist times, it was not possible to talk about this because we were friends with Soviet Union, and it was not really a political strategy to say that we killed a lot of Soviet people. And after the change in the democratic system after 1990, it was also, again, not a strategy of the politics to talk about this, because it was better to think about ourselves as victims of this war, and not ones who did something bad or did something wrong. Of course, I think it is very important to talk about what really happened, and to know the history in detail. And I think for our country, or my country, this is something, a job which is not done fully yet. And we have to talk about those really bad and horrible things that the Hungarian army committed in the Soviet Union against civilian population. So this is one thing, but for me to touch this topic, it is very important that how I feel today in the world, or because somehow what is important to tell about the main character, that he's a simple person. He's coming from the countryside, and he is drafted into the army. He's taken away thousands of kilometers away into an unknown territory. He doesn't know the culture. He doesn't speak the language. He doesn't know anything about, and he has to understand who is the enemy and who is not, who is a partisan and who is not, and has to kind of decide over lives of people. And I think this is a very interesting situation where this character gets into this totally situation where he cannot orientate, where he loses his orientation, and it becomes very difficult for him to decide what is good and what is not, or this somehow the difference between good and bad becomes a bit shabby or a bit vague. And I think this is the most interesting moment for me, where I come in, or I feel that also, in a way, I think in the world, we can think about the pandemic or the political situation, or many other ways, but I think we feel a kind of darkness around us. And towards this darkness, we kind of lose our normal way of orientation. We lose those kind of things how we used to think about the world, or how we used to decide what is good and bad for our country, for myself. What is my task in this situation? In a way, this character in the film, he thinks he knows what is his task. I mean, basically, he doesn't know what his task is. I mean, he only knows one thing. He wants to get back to his home country, to continue his life as it was before. And he believes everything will be the same. And but he still feels this kind of darkness coming closer to him, but he doesn't know what is his task in the moment to fight against this darkness. He doesn't know what his task is. And I think this is, I feel kind of the same today.
It's really interesting what you're saying. Just to come back to the historical part, I think in Lithuania we're going through the same process as well. And for the country, for the people living in the country, it's really important to understand. So I completely agree with you that some of the past, which was, years ago, it's really necessary to understand well, and to kind of stop repeating some narratives which were built not on the actual facts. So I really kind of appreciate what you do, and I think I can relate from my own country's kind of point of view of what's happening at the moment in Lithuania. But to jump on this darkness of what you're saying, because yeah, I think this bridge between the past and the present is really necessary to understand the present moment. Sometimes you really need to look back, and sometimes it's maybe much easier to understand that nowadays, this disorientation, when you look back, when you know you have already some distance and you can take some situation which is not from now, but understand some moral dilemmas or some disorientation of nowadays. But what you're mentioning is this kind of closeness of darkness, but your film is titled Natural Light. So I thought I'm going to ask that later, but because you already mentioned about this darkness, maybe you could comment, because Natural Light, the title, it's really open to many interpretations watching the film, but I would be really curious to hear your own meaning of the title.
I mean, for me, mostly natural light means a kind of light where you cannot hide away or you cannot lie about yourself. I mean, if we compare it, for example, to artificial light is the light where you can be who you want to show yourself to be, or you can really lie about yourself if you want to show yourself strong or you want to show yourself cool. I mean, natural light is the light where you cannot hide these things away, how weak you are or how fragile you are. So I think for me, this is the most important part of it. But there are some, I mean, natural light has a meaning also, something being close to nature, maybe. And nature is important in the film too. It has a very special role because nature in the film is, what is interesting about it, it's not a kind of friendly or nice or tamed or gentle nature. It is a nature which is totally indifferent towards everything. It is constantly present. It is a constant outside observer of everything, but it affects everything also. So it's for me, this indifference of the nature has to do also with natural light. It's a kind of constantly present, but at the same time an observer of everything, and still affects everything.
But as you mentioned now, this indifference of nature and this distance. On the other hand, I remember this scene, which I really like. It was very touching and disturbing in a way. But some of the characters, like I remember the scene where Shemetka sees the woman hiding in the mud, like really slowly. I think it's a brilliant scene and really kind of working on this visibility, invisibility, and how you take the decision, this small moment of him standing and seeing that. But on the other hand, for this woman, like this raw and kind of indifference nature becomes a way to hide, a way to kind of drown yourself and really look for this, you know, safe place. So it's
interesting. Kind of... Yeah. That's true what you say. Also,
no, but I was. Please.
No, I mean, I'm just. I think still it is also true that kind of nature is there from the beginning and the end, and people can die and people can, I don't know, do whatever. Nature still stays the same. It's a kind of. I mean, I would say that nature is not really interested in people's lives, but in this situation, yes, there is some protection. That's true. That's interesting. I never really pointed that out for myself.
We could talk as well a bit about Shemetka and about the actor Ferenc Zsabo. I was wondering because it's really subtle. His face really translates a lot what's happening inside him, even though it seems that he can't really figure out. But it's so subtle, and I was thinking, how did you find him, and how did you work with the actor Żabo?
I think I just want to maybe start with why we chose to have amateurs or amateur actors in the film, because it was a decision from the very beginning, and it was basically a decision also in dramaturgy, because somehow what we do in the film is that we don't show the characters in action. We are not in line with their action. Somehow we want to do the opposite, or I do the opposite, that somehow what he's doing is separate from what he's thinking. So in a way, I take apart the visible action and the inner process. It's not something which is in line. They are not in line, these two things. And the aim of this is to create a constant hesitation inside, that what he's doing actually is not what he's thinking, that he's constantly having doubt about what he should do or what his task is. And I think to show amateurs is a way to create this kind of dramaturgy, because amateurs are not acting. They are basically not into action. When you use amateur actors, you mostly observe them how they are and who they are, and use their real personalities. And they don't really have to act or create the scene. They are themselves. We watch their presence, their real presence. And somehow, for me, this kind of idea that to show how people exist in time is a key to this film, or key to these characters. I want to show them how they exist like animals exist, or the nature exists, or how an infant exists. It's a kind of constant motionlessness out from outside, but to create this kind of full of motion inside the head. So there's this separation of the outside action and in the inner world. I think if we watch these characters, they seem kind of motionless or kind of still. But I wanted to create this feeling that they have a constant brain ideas going inside of their heads. So how did we find them? It was a long process. It was 2 years that we found these characters. And we were basically having two ways of searching for them. What I knew, that I was looking for people who do physical work, and on the other hand, who work outside, who are working in nature. And basically, we were looking for farmers. And there's also another reason why we look for these people, because you have to believe when you look at these faces that they are already a year ago, or 8-9 months ago, in the war. And I think if you choose these people who anyway do a very physical work in their normal life and have a kind of, they are sunburnt, they are constantly outside in nature, you have this feeling that I think you can believe them that they are already like 8 months ago in the war, fighting in these very harsh circumstances. So I think this is something very important. In Hungary, for example, with actors, we have a problem that it's very difficult to take out actors from theaters. So basically, when you shoot with actors, you can take them away for, several days, or maybe every evening you have to go back and they have to play in the theater. So you really cannot do this kind of training which would be needed to believe that they are, 1 year ago in the war. I think for that, in an American film, you can, hire an actor for several months and train it in those circumstances where you can believe that they are, for a long time in nature. With Hungarian actors, it's very difficult to do that. It's basically, there's financial part of it also, but it's physically not possible because everybody is acting in a theater or playing in a theater. So one way to do it is to use farmers or real farmers and to try to search for a good character among them. So what we did is we called basically all Hungarian farms. We did a huge search, and we called all these firms, and most of them didn't let us in. They were, I don't know, 1/3 of them who allowed us to go and visit them and to photograph the workers of the agriculture farm. So we had like 150 agriculture firms that we visited and where we took photographs of people, and slowly it became clear who are the most interesting among them. So this was basically the process. There was also another kind of way we were casting, which is a bit different, that we chose an area in the country and we went from village to village and actually basically knocked on the doors and asked if if you're interested. So it was a more personal way. This one less systematic, but it was also very we found a lot of people through this way too, which was very interesting because somehow when you go into a house and knock on the door, you right away get to know people in a much more personal situation, and they might help you in a much better way or quicker way than you might imagine.
Yeah, you really succeeded to create this impression that these people are really tired. In their eyes, you can feel this really heavy weight. I think you did it really well. But as you mentioned the time as well, I was wondering why have you chosen the frame of the time, just few days in the film? What was important? Why wasn't important just to focus on those couple days? And actually, through those couple days, it happens really a lot. But anyway, I was wondering, what was that from the beginning your idea, or it came later?
No, that was from the beginning the idea. But it's, if I would answer this, maybe I not answer your question correctly. But what was interesting for me not to show a cause-effect kind of dramaturgy. That I really wanted to be, as I said, in the present time of these people, and not to make a consequence or line of consequence that he did this, and because of that, I don't know, for example, he had a trauma in his family life at home, and that's why he's acting like this. I didn't want to use this kind of background of the characters. Somehow, I think kind of the idea of the film was different. I wanted to really just focus on these present moments, and that's it. I think my answer would be this. But it was from the very beginning. It was clear that it was only taking part 3 or 4 days. What is maybe interesting? Why we finish it? Where we finish it? The film finishes when he's going back on a train home, and for a long time we had a bit longer ending of the film. In the original novel, Shemetka goes home and commits suicide, and we were thinking about to include this in the film, but finally I decided not to, because I think for me it is also very interesting that we finish the film without a kind of moral ending. Somehow, what I felt that it's very important to get away from moral judgment or moral view of things, not to moralize at all, just to be with these people. And in this, what is interesting, because if you are watching people so close in this present moment, even if they do horrible things, you will try to see them as people and not as, you don't put a badge on them that they are the bad guys or they are the good guys. This was also something very important, that not to have this kind of judgment in the film, that you are bad and you did something bad, or you did something good, or you are the good, you are the victim. Also, I think as I tried to get away from this kind of preconceptions.
Yeah, and I think you really succeeded by doing that, and to end this film in a more open note, like a bit more hopeful for this character who really, you can sense that he went through a lot, and all of this, what you said before, this what was spinning in his head, and the actions he was making. Anyway, I always felt throughout the film that he has this strong goodness inside him, and he constantly feel this, I don't know how to put it, maybe what you said, doubts, but also this kind of, that he really doesn't want to do what he's asked to do. And he feels so much frustrated. Like, I don't know, maybe I was also feeling that because there is a lot of silence in the film and these looks between the people, those who are kind of on the different sides, but they keep looking at each other without speaking a lot, without being able to communicate. But I don't know, maybe I just created that, but on the other hand, for me, it seems that Shemetka is really trying to see these people. And
no, for sure. But I just want to add one thing. I mean, he clearly doesn't like violence, Shemetka. He tries to stay away from this violence, or he's not enjoying war. But on the other hand, he doesn't want any complications for himself. And I think this is interesting because it means that he's a good person, or he imagines himself as a good person, but he's at the same time a weak guy too. So, and I think this is a question for him, and also in the film, that can you be a good person and a weak person at the same time, or this is not so easy to answer this, and I was interested in this.
Yeah, and also then this weakness, it's a lot about this turbulence, what's happening around you, and how not to be actually weak when you really cannot decide. Yeah, when so many circumstances are put on your head, and you have the duty. I mean, you were sent to do the duty, and what is your moral decision, to do the duty or to actually act from your own moral principles? So I think that's as well like quite important question, thinking about goodness, separating goodness and evil. But also because we're getting into the almost the end of our conversation by the time, but I was also wondering, maybe you could say a bit about the style of the film, about the cinematography created together with Tamas Dabos, and also the sound and music, which is very subtle. You almost feel that there is no music in the film, but some parts actually has it, and it's not dictating how to feel, but it's really nicely included in the texture of the film. So maybe just comment about this.
Yeah, about the cinematography, I have to say that I worked together with Tamas, the cinematographer, for a long time. So we know each other very well, and I think it is important part of the film because he's not only the cinematographer in a way, but he's quite closely watching the preparations of the film. He took part in the casting. I asked his idea about the script, so he's very much into the project from the very beginning. And somehow the cinematography of the film, or the style of the film, is basically the first thing we have in mind. So it's not that we have a script and a story and then we choose the style, but it went just the opposite, that we know the style we want to do the film in, and then we had the story. So it's something which, how we work or what we do is from the very beginning clear for us how we want to do a film. And then we found the story, and then we found the landscape and everything. So it is interesting. But how we work, I think we want to work quite instinctively. I mean, on the set, we try to bring a lot of freedom that we can still change a lot of things when we are in the set and looking at the characters. I think basically the cinematography or the style of the film focuses on the faces and the landscape, the connection between landscape and face, and somehow this is I mean, somehow this is the basis of everything, and this defines everything in a way. I mean, I don't know if I have to talk about technical things, but we want to be relatively simple also in technical means. Everything is handheld camera, but it's not moving a lot. So it's interesting that it's handheld, but mostly a lot of things are very still, but still it's on the shoulder. And on the other hand, the lighting, we use some lighting in the film, of course, but we use very minimal lighting techniques. So it's basically almost nothing. So the idea is also to be as close to natural light as possible. So that's maybe about the cinematography. About the sound and the music, I have to say that the composer of the film is a Latvian composer, a very fantastic composer. She's called Santa Ratniece, and we were really happy to work with her. And it's not only her music that we hear. There's also an Austrian composer called Klaus Lang, and I use music from Santa and from Klaus Lang in certain parts of the film. But yes, I mean, what is maybe interesting about the music, that it was not meant to be. So I somehow don't like when music is going. How to say it? It's difficult to explain it, but I mean, to be very minimal, of course, but to be also quite hidden or quite almost part of the sound design, being part of the sound design. The sound design is also something which was very important for me. We worked a lot. We had very good French sound people who, with the French co-production, it was possible to work with them, Jocelyn Robert and Dominique Gaboriou, and we worked a lot on to create the sounds of the village, the nature. I mean, basically, we have a lot of quiet scenes, so it was a real challenge to fill it up with sounds, and it was a very interesting process for me. It was the first time I had to think about sound in such a depth, and it's a real creative part of filmmaking to create sound, because we have very few dialogues, and since you have very few dialogues, you have to create something very rich instead of the dialogues in sound. So that was an important part. But if you ask some concrete questions, maybe I can.
No, it's difficult. It's really interesting. Interesting to hear, because I think all those elements of your chosen film language is really kind of builds together this tension and this and really supports the theme of what you wanted to explore. So I think it's really interesting. And for the ending of the conversation, I actually got one question from the audience, from Erika and Benita. They are asking what inspires you during these isolating times.
Okay. I mean, we were in the past 1 year, we were really hardly working on the post-production of this film. We were editing. We had the chance to edit and to do the sound design in the autumn, and it was a real tense, and I didn't really have time to be inspired by something else than this film. So till December, basically, I was only living inside this film, and but it was a very inspiring time, a very creative time. I never edited and never did the sound so long and so much in depth and so much in detail, and I learned a lot through this. But since December, I have more free time, and I try to think about new projects. I'm writing things. I read a lot. I really like this part of filmmaking also, when you are free in your head to think about anything, be inspired by anything. I mean, I mostly read. So this time, since January, I mostly read a lot of books, and I read in a very instinctive way. So I read something, then something comes into my hand. I try to get another book. So it's like going from, it's not something that I have a list of books I want to read, but it goes like from one book to the other very instinctively. And it's a very interesting research. Basically, like this, I don't know what I will come up in the end, or what I will find in the end. It's a real going into the unknown part of filmmaking, this part, because and it's very inspiring. I really like it. So basically, I do this now at home. Read a lot of books. I use my time for that, and yeah, I think so. I have a family. I try to be inspired by them too. They are very important for me. My kids. So
Great.
yeah, I mean, I try to use a lot of time being alone and in silence. So I have to say that when I'm reading or when I'm researching, I have to be surrounded by silence, and this is something that helps me to be inspired, to be alone and in and silent.
That's really nice, and I just want to say thank you and wish you a good journey through the books. I think I'm gonna do the same after the festival gonna end as well. So surround myself with a lot of books and look for new inspirations. I think that's the best what we can do at the moment. So really, Dénesu, thank you so much for your time and for your film, and best of luck for you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure too, to talk to you and be here at the festival.
Thanks.
It's like
Bye.
this. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Чуєш, партизан? Чуєш, сучка?
Уходите отсюда, слышите? Все и так у нас забрали. Ничего у нас не осталось.
A bűn az ajtón miatt leselkedik. Rád vágyakozik. Uralkodnod kell rajta.